Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, August 5th, 2010. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week continuing our coverage of the National Homebrewers Conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, we present the Going Pro panel. 4 brewery owners give us different approaches and perspectives on starting your own commercial brewery. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can follow me on Twitter at Basic Brewing, all one word. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james, and our show page is facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show, and we appreciate your support greatly. We have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too, so you can help support them as well. And now you can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on the iTunes Store, or the iPhone Store, whichever one. It's great to be back from vacation. I'm a little rusty talking on the microphone, but that's the way it goes. Among the places that we went, the family and I headed out to Estes Park, Colorado, to hike around the Rocky Mountain National Park. Gorgeous scenery and good weather for the most part. It was nice and cool. A little rainy on one day, but that's okay. It was a little tough for me to be in the Napa Valley of beer without being able to visit some of our favorite locations up there. But we did stumble on LB Brewing in Hays, Kansas, on the way out there, and had a couple of wonderful stouts, and took home a growler of the oatmeal stout. Estes Park Brewery had a tasty Saison and a tasty IPA as well. Mountain Sun in Boulder, Colorado. Their FYIPA was delicious, as was the food, and we stopped by Redstone Meadery to say hi to the chairman of the mead, David Myers, on the way home, and take home a couple of bottles of wondrous meads, which we have not yet opened. Need to remedy that. I always remark about how behind I am on email, and being away from home doesn't help matters, especially when the internet connection isn't the best in the world. So I appreciate your patience in waiting on me to answer your notes, and I hope to dig further into that virtual stack this week. So be patient. Speaking of this week, we have an awesome panel discussion. The room was full, and the speakers were very generous with their time and information. So I'm going to split this one up. Today, we'll have the panel discussion, and next week we'll have questions from the audience. And by the way, I'll post a link to the presentation page on the American Homebrewers Association site in the description of this episode on basicbrewingradio.com, so you can download the presentation PDF and follow along if you like. And iPhone users, look in the extras feature of this episode on your Basic Brewing iPhone app for that PDF. One little advisory for parents and people who are working in a work-safe environment. Omar does say one PG-rated word in his presentation, so be forewarned.
Hi, everybody. I'm Drew Beach. I'm a member of the governing committee, so this is one of our duties. The usual announcements with rain. Please use your cups because we don't want to destroy the environment. And turn off your cell phones or else the panel gets to make fun of you. Okay? So today we're doing starting your own brewery. And as is the history of craft brewing, we all start from home brewing and come up and turn pro. And so today we have for you Omar Ansari from Surly Brewing Company, Rick Garvin from Mad Fox Brewing Company in Falls Church, Virginia, who I understand just actually brewed their first batch of beer and got their license. Is that right? So, yeah, that's a good one. All right, so Tom Hennessy from Colorado Boy Pub and Brewery in Ridgeway. And then Jay and Lori Wentz, owners of Weasel Boy. And finally, your moderator for today is James Spencer, the host of Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video. So without further ado, let's get it on.
Good morning. Is this too loud for you after club night? We can talk softly and mime a lot if that helps your head. How many people here have either in the back of your mind or in the front of your mind that you want to brew professionally?
Don't do it.
How many want to work for somebody else? Okay, we got a few. All right. So I would assume then that by extrapolation, most of you want to work for yourself with your own brewery. And we've got some people here who've done that or doing that. And Drew's already introduced them. So what we're going to do is they've got presentations that they will take you through. And I will lead the discussion afterwards. So why don't I get out of the way and let these guys get started. Rick, are you first? Or Tom? Tom first. Okay. Take it away, Tom.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes each, so we have plenty of time for question and answers. Quickly, 1876, there were 2,000 breweries in the United States. Right now we have 1,500. So we have a lot of work to do, and my mission is to get as many breweries as possible. We have a brewery in a town of 800 people. And we make a profit. I don't have to do another job. I just have a brewery. So if you can do it in a town of 800, think how many towns across America you can do this. So what I'm going to offer here really quickly in 5 minutes is just a little synopsis of like an immersion course we do at the brewery, a 1-week immersion course. Okay, why a pub brewery? First of all, and I've had a packaged brewery, and there's a place for every type of brewery, but a small brewery, a small pub, the customers come to you. Every keg we sell, we're getting about $400 to $450 a keg because I'm not selling it wholesale to somebody else. We have cash flow compared to an old packaging brewery I used to have. Every day I have cash. I'm not waiting for my customers to pay up. I have no packaging. I'm not fighting with a bottling machine or a canning machine. So therefore I have less equipment, and I have less startup capital. Here's how you do it. Here's just this is the quick down and dirty of what's going to save you big bucks and a lot of time. Okay, start with a restaurant. Now this may surprise you, but there's a lot of restaurants out there for lease because they don't survive. It's one of the fastest turnover businesses around, not brew pubs, but restaurants. So in your town, as you drive around or you look on Craigslist or the real estate guides, you'll find restaurants out there for lease or that are struggling that you could just call the owner up and say, hey, would you like to sell me your restaurant? The advantages of a restaurant is there's a lot of advantages. The advantages of a restaurant is it does have restrooms that are up to code, which you need. It's going to have floor drains. It may be on a slab, which is great for supporting weight, but if it's not, there's ways around that. It usually has ventilation. It has existing use zoning, which is going to save you a lot of headaches, and it's going to save you a lot of time with your zoning people. In fact, depending on what state and what your local laws are, if you're doing a brew pub in an existing restaurant, that's considered an existing use because a brew pub's considered a restaurant. See, if you're not doing anything structural, you don't even need an architect in some states because you're just replacing the kitchen equipment with brewing equipment. Same thing. This will save you a lot of time and a lot of money. I can't overemphasize if you're serious about doing a brewery or even it's just in the back of your mind, it's going to be location driven. You find that great location. It's somebody put a lot of money into a building. We once did a restaurant in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The previous tenants spent $850,000 for a Zen Buddhist restaurant that didn't work in the 1980s. We walked in. We spent $80,000 for a quick remodel. That restaurant's still there 20-something years later because we didn't have that big capital expenditure. That's what you'll get when you get a restaurant that's already existing. Frankenbrew. I made a video in 1995 on how to build breweries for $20,000 or less. The current brewery I have cost me $20,000. What Frankenbrew means is just basically using dairy equipment, pieces, parts, your own imagination, basically what you're doing right now with your own breweries. I want to caution you from the outset, do not do a nano brewery. Do a nano brewery as far as size of your seating area, size of your space, but don't do a 1.5 barrel brewery if you're serious about brewing. Start with 5 barrels minimum, but 7 barrels. Some friends of mine just opened a nano brewery in a town close to us with 20,000 people. And I said, you'll never last a year. You're going to be expanding within months. They are in the process after 6 months to moving into a new location, putting in a 7-barrel system, because they were brewing 4 times a week and not keeping up. So if you look at these little tanks here, okay, the one on the top right is a Grundy tank. You've all seen them. Thanks to England getting rid of them, we have them all over the place. They've gone up in price. They're $1,200, $1,500 now. But that's a pressure vessel. That's one of your most difficult things to deal with in Frankenbrew, because you got to have a pressure vessel. I take that back. You don't have to have a pressure vessel. You can go right from your fermenter into your kegs and shake them up and have carbonated beer. But that's the most difficult of the other things. If you look to the top left, that's a dairy tank. The bottom left, that's a dairy tank. Both of these make great mash tuns, and they make great fermenters. I had a brewery in Colorado Springs. We used the dairy tank on your bottom left. Won lots of medals at GABF and World Beer Cup. Open fermentation is nothing new. And you can pick them up. I've seen them on Craigslist for $600. The inside of the tank is beautiful. I knew a brewery in Albuquerque that used it for a brew kettle. I don't care for it as a brew kettle because you can't whirlpool in it, whereas the one up on top, a lot of these are jacketed for glycol refrigerant. But if you wanted to turn it into a brew kettle, you can do low-pressure steam in that as well. Or you can skirt it and put a direct flame underneath it. So what you do with Frankenbrew is you basically get on Craigslist, you get on eBay. If you know any dairies, I think there's a few around here. They're always upgrading. They're always getting rid of these small 200-gallon, 300-gallon tanks. The welds on them are beautiful. It's the way to go. For your basic tanks, heat exchangers, pumps, all that. I use Craigslist all the time. I also use dairy engineering out of Denver, and there's dairy tanks, dairy equipment all over the place. Okay, cost of project. Because I'm getting older. Now here's a typical thing. Brewing equipment, $20,000. This is not all inclusive because there's going to be a few other startup costs. But if you get an existing restaurant, legal rents you're going to have to pay unless you can get the landlord to allow you to have free rent during construction. Furniture and fixtures, inventories, blah blah. Less than $100,000. I'm helping a guy right now in a small town, and our budget for his brewery is $60,000. I see no reason why he won't be able to get that. And then I don't know if you can even see this, but let's say you brew once a week, 7 barrels, and you sell once a week those 7 barrels out of your own pub. You should be able to do over $20,000 in sales. Pay yourself, pay your staff, and by staff I mean, for example, our little pub is 1,200 square feet. We do sell some panini sandwiches, but we don't have a kitchen staff. We bring up a par of sandwiches we make every day, and then when somebody wants a sandwich, the bartender throws it on the panini grill, and it's done. It's served with chips, no dishes, nothing. So our staff consists of 2 bartenders on a shift and a brewer. So giving that, you sell one tank a week, which is 1 brew a week, which is about 3.5 days worth of work. Giving transfers, cleaning kegs, that sort of thing. You should do 20-something thousand in sales based on what your rent is. If you're getting a rent unless you're in Manhattan, most small towns, your rent's going to be about $12 a square foot per annual. So that's about $1,500. You can see that a net profit of, say, over $5,000 isn't bad. You can earn a nice little living like that. And of all the breweries, I've done 6 breweries. I had a chain of brew pubs, wood oven pizza. We had about 30 people on staff. And then I also did a packaging brewery. We had a 40-barrel system, and we did 6-packs and all that. And I love packaging breweries because it's nothing more satisfying than seeing your bottle out there at a liquor store and seeing people, with that product. But this little setup, a small pub, which is an existing restaurant that you can do, where you're brewing once a week, twice a week, and you're selling everything right out of the pub, is profitable. You don't need to work for anything else. We actually close at 8 o'clock at night, and we're open on the weekends. We stay open as late as 9 o'clock. We open our doors at 4 o'clock, except Saturdays when we get a lot of beer tourists, and we open at 1. And we hit these numbers. So, depending on what size town you're in, it's totally doable. I encourage you. It's not as difficult as you think. If you go to our website, coloradoboy.com, my email address is there. If you see a place that looks really possible, I encourage you to email me. It only takes me a second to answer your email. I'm happy to promote it. Give me a buzz. Okay?
I think we're going to see already from this discussion that professional brewing is a lot like home brewing in that there's not just one way to do it. Everybody goes from different angles. And let's now hear from Jay and Lori Wentz from Weasel Boy Brewing Company. Are you by yourself, Jay?
Yeah, I'm by myself. Lori's going to sit here and look good. She's going to answer all the questions afterwards. I'll be pretty brief here. Tom really hit a lot of points that we would hit, which you'll see from some of the stuff on our slides. We did many things that he suggested before I ever met him, because I met him yesterday. So we were established as a domestic LLC in July of 2006, and our startup costs from the point we walked into the improved space until we put our first brew in the kettle was less than $75,000. Our brewing system, we were looking at dairy equipment much like Tom was, and then all of a sudden this nice little cross system fell into our lap, and we actually walked out of Florida with a complete brewing system: three vessel brew house, 3 conical fermenters, 4 bright / serving tanks, everything jacketed, glycol chiller, which was crap, heat exchanger, piping, hoses, pumps, the whole deal for $12,000. So luck has a lot to do with this too. We were self-financed. We took a different approach than a lot of people do. We wanted no investors. We didn't want anybody to give us $10. So this was all out of our pocket. We did one of the cardinal rules that Omar said not to break, and I'll let him tell you that on his last slide. We have a 7-barrel brew pub where we have limited self-distribution, so we do a brew pub much like Tom's talking about. We have a small tap room. The brewery's basically right in the tap room. We're open in limited hours. We open at 4, close about midnight, 5 days a week. We do very limited food, as Tom suggested. We have a local pizzeria, par-baked pizzas for us. Somebody orders a pizza, we throw it in a little rack oven. 8 minutes later, there's their pizza. So it's working well for us. We were outfitted for startup of brewing operations in less than 8 months, and the landlord actually did let us start construction before we finalized the lease deal. So we had about 3 or 4 months of free time working there. So again, we had great support. We leased our space in a redeveloping area of our town. It's a historic district. It's right on the river. He said something about $12 per square foot. Well, here's the luck again. Ours is $3, so we're paying $3 per square foot. We had a good lease, 3-year initial and 4 2-year extensions. So we can lock in for 11 years with just slight increases on each renewal. So buy used equipment whenever possible. We bought the used $12,000 system. We bought used refrigeration, used walk-in coolers, used tower, used kegs, used everything. If we could find it used and it worked, we bought it. New, it's, if there's any equipment suppliers in here, sorry, but man, there's no sense in paying it because that stuff's out there. So you just got to do a little searching. Like Tom said, Craigslist, eBay. We bought pumps off of eBay that should have cost $600. They were brand new, wrapped up, and it was $200. So just, you got to be inventive. You got to be excited about it. You got to be willing to search and dig and claw and find this stuff because it's there. we invested a lot of sweat equity. Everything that we could possibly do ourselves that the state or the city would allow us to do, we did. They wouldn't let us do our own drains because that's health department regulated where we're at, and we couldn't do our own electric because that's code, although the electrician was a good friend of ours. So I literally pulled all the wire, or we should say we pulled all the wire. We installed all the fixtures, put in plugs, lights, everything. But that literally saved us probably $15,000 in electrician costs just because it was time that he didn't have to be there. I could do it at night, whatever. Sweat equity is important. We bartered for services. There are a lot of cool people out there that are really good, talented craftsmen that will work for beer. And I'm sure there are no Ohio governmental officials here, and if there are, I'm in trouble. You can't give away beer or barter for beer in Ohio, so of course we did not do that. Okay, you're all home brewers. You guys know a lot of pro brewers. You guys, have homebrew clubs. Utilize willing volunteers. We had homebrewers and friends and just acquaintances coming out of the woodwork to volunteer time to help sweep the floors, paint the walls, pull masking tape off where we painted the walls, all kinds of stuff. So and they're the same. They're kind of willing to work for beer too. I don't know. We had an extremely excited landlord. So there again, the luck fell into it. He's promoted us. He was really, really excited to have us in there. So he allowed us to get in and start working. Before we actually finalized the lease, we're kind of really, really, really good at dragging things out too. So yeah, we'll sign that Monday. About a month and a half later, okay, we'll see you next week. So he was understanding, or we wouldn't have been able to do that. Two slides, if you can see them up there. The top slide was the building when we first walked into it in the summer of 2006. The bottom slide was probably around January 2008. So quite a little change there. And we actually also installed all of our own equipment, hung our own glycol loop. We did it, like I say, we did everything if we could do it. Our focus, we have a really narrow focus, and if Chris Graham's in here, our focus is beer, beer, and more beer, with just a little wine. We sell only our own beer in-house with the exception of one gas draft. We sell no bottled or canned product, no macros, and the only other thing we sell other than our beer and the guest draft is we sell locally produced wine that's actually produced off vineyards and wineries within our county at this moment, but we might step outside the county at least. We have an alternative atmosphere. We're kind of part coffee shop, part living room, part old world pub. We don't have any TVs. We have games on the bars. We have people that actually come in and talk to each other. Instead of when you're looking at me and you see the TV back here and all of a sudden you go, what? So we wanted to be a real social place where people conversed, came in, relaxed, had a good time. They can plug in their laptop. They can talk. They can have a beer. They can just relax. So we have families that come in. They bring in their 3 or 4 year olds or even younger. We had a 1-year-old birthday party in our pub. He's our youngest customer, by the way. He was there when he was 5 days old. So again, what I said earlier: limited food availability. Just the par-baked pizzas right now that's prepared by a pizzeria right down the street. So we have no kitchen, so to speak of. Although we are doing some planning right now for a small expansion. Limited distribution to select outside accounts. And this is kind of cool because we've kind of gained a reputation locally, and we're having people coming to us wanting our beer. So we don't have a salesman that goes out and sells beer. And we may only have 20 accounts right now. We're staying within like an hour of our pub. We have to be really careful or we can overstep our ability to produce beer for them. And as Tom said, you're going to make a lot more money in-house because you're getting $400, $500 a keg instead of whatever your wholesale rate is here, $95, $120, if you're Stone, $150. Because that, limited availability, that can actually drive price too if you market yourself as a premium product, which Stone and AleSmith and those guys have done. So there's a lot of angles to this, but we really want to stay close to home, be affordable, be competitive. We have careful growth and expansion. We just added 2 new fermenters in January. Our annual capacity right now would probably be a hair over 700 barrels. So we're still very small, but we needed to jump that up a little bit. We commenced brewing operations in July 15th, 2007. Our 2007 production from July to December was a whopping 62 barrels. That was all draft counts outside because we were continuing to finalize our taproom space so we could have on-premise sales. We opened our taproom in January of 2008. As soon as we opened the doors of the taproom, we were in the black. So the only time we lost money was that first 6 months while we were trying to fit out the taproom and get the customers to come to us. So that right there shows you how important in-house sales are. It's cash flow. So since then, it's been great. We have a 2008 production of 222 barrels, 2009 production of 290 barrels, and we're on pace right now for over 400 barrels, probably shooting towards 450 if we're lucky. So, and on the bottom line, we still work full-time jobs, and I hope that doesn't last much longer. So that's me, and that's us. So I'll pass this on, and we'll talk here in a little bit.
What are we drinking, by the way? I saw pictures going around.
We brought our English mild, so it's a 3.8% mild brown ale.
The presenters need beverages. Anybody? The pitchers still out there somewhere?
The audience needs beverages.
Oh no! See, we have limited distribution already. So, all right. Up next is Rick Garvin. Take it away, Rick.
So we're a bit of a counterexample here. We're a larger operation. I personally have a bit more money into our company than the other two speakers, and I'm a little bit jealous that they get to control their own lives a bit. I'm going to talk about how to participate in starting a brewery and keep your day job, which is what I'm doing. Mad Fox Brewing Company is the brainchild of Bill Madden. I've started 7 successful businesses in the past and sold 3 of them. And I knew how to start a business. I knew how to run a business. And Bill knew how to make beer. And brewers, very talented brewers with dozens of GABF medals and real medals, don't start out with a lot of capital. Bill owned his truck and his dog. The bank actually owned the truck, and the dog was collateral. So Bill's the brewer. He's brewing his, we haven't named it yet. It's a Golden Ale Today. If you guys were in Ant's talk, it's classic hoppy Golden Ale Today. We brewed 75 barrels this week. Our first brew was Sunday, which was an ESB. We didn't have a permit yet for brewing, so it was a system test. Everyone knows how that works. It's not beer yet because it's still fermenting. Because Christy and I stopped by the brewery yesterday to fill growlers, and it wasn't going to happen unless somebody wanted to pitch it for start another brew. So we did formation in 2007. I spent a year with Bill trying to get things going, and he was too busy making beer and winning medals to start a company. So I wrote the first check, got our capital going, and we're going to open on July 12th of this year, and we've raised so far $2.92 million. That's $1.37 million in equity. We'd have been open a year ago, but the financial markets exploded. And I'll explain in a second why that was a really good thing for all of us here. We have $950,000 in SBA guaranteed loans, and it's great to buy used equipment unless your banker says, I'm not going to write a check for that. Our landlord construction allowance is $600,000. Our landlord has already paid that. So we spent about $1.5 million to make our first 75 barrels of beer. And we got about another $1 million that's going to come. I'm going to be writing checks for over the next month. We have 41 investors. 26 of those are home brewers. How many Mad Fox investors are in the room? Just one? I guess Bill and Wendy didn't get up. Your friends will help you start a brewery, and they'll bet a lot on it. We're in a different location than a lot of places. We're in Falls Church, Virginia. It was founded in 1699. It's the 3rd most affluent census district in the country. The other 2 are within a 20-minute drive. Within 5 miles, we have 390,000 residents. This is my pitch to investors. The median household income is $130,000. Dick and Lynn Cheney live 1.5 miles away. Colin Powell's down the street. The guy who ran McCain's presidential campaign is down the street, and he didn't invest because his wife wanted to start a yarn shop. Really bad idea. That's already failed. We're a 10-minute lunch drive for 200,000 plus office workers. Our brew pub was driven by the demographics and the economics of our location. $2.92 million. Well, we'll have a $120,000 operating reserve. Our reserve is bigger than these other two examples we saw. Why so much? It's because there is so much money to be harvested in this particular geography. We signed a 15-year lease with 2 5-year options. My 13-year-old daughter did the math and said, "Dad, you're going to be 71 when you're done with this lease." I hope so. We didn't pay $3 a foot. We didn't pay $7 a foot. When we first started looking, we were looking at $40 per square foot, triple net rent outside the D.C. Beltway. 25% discount due to financial collapse gets us $31 a foot. And you'll start learning about things like common area maintenance, CAM, things that get charged. We're in a mixed-use development, so we have 7 stories of condos above us. So it's a little bit cheaper for us from a CAM perspective because all our neighbors are paying for our trash removal. One of the downsides of being in space like that is that you can't just run flues and exhaust anywhere you want. So we also have the most expensive brewery flue on the planet. Our brewery is a brand new premier stainless 15-barrel system. It's a $250,000 brewery. We tried to buy used. We went up to Pinnachuck Brewery. We were ready to buy it. And see, that was 5 minutes. That's fast.
I thought you were getting a phone call.
No.
Please turn your cell phone off.
Yeah, well. So we tried to buy used systems. We did all our analysis. Scott Zetterstrom from ME Solutions, who actually worked with Omar on his setup, did analysis for us, and a 17-year-old system was going to cost 72% of new. One of the reasons is that stainless is a lot cheaper now than it was before the financial collapse. We have 180 barrels of fermentation. We'll be to serve 1,500 to 2,000 barrels on location. We're oversized because you cannot self-distribute in Virginia, but we can distribute into D.C. as long as we stop by the City Hall and pay our excise tax on the way in. So that model is something that Bill's done before. We also have a barrel room. There's nothing in it right now because I haven't approved to spend the money on that yet, but we'll have barrels in there full of beer before we open. 9,200 square feet, 225 diners, 50 bar stools, outdoor seating for 80. This place is big, and it looks bigger when you put walls up. And we're in the process of hiring 90 employees right now. Full service chef-driven restaurant. We have an executive chef, an executive sous chef, and a sous chef, plus 16 line cooks. Our area is dominated by the Cisco U.S. Food frozen burger, individually quick frozen chicken tender food. And it's positively hellish. The better the beer, the worse the food. I'm not going to rank on any of the brew pub chains, but let's just say I have trouble finding something good to eat there. The restaurants that have great food that are reasonably priced have just hellish things to drink. So we're gonna really make a difference there on the food side, and that's going to be one of our distinguishing characteristics. So we have a lot of owners at Mad Fox, and this is really my pitch to you. There's one brewer at Mad Fox. We have 41 investors, 26 are home brewers, 22 individual investors. There's 28 joint investors. This doesn't all add up because some people have more than one. And 8 investment LLCs and trusts. Board of directors, advisors. You look at our brewer, Bill Madden. He's the CEO. He owns more of the company than anybody else. One of the reasons why he started out with no capital, the rest of us had the capital. He had the sweat. So he structured things so that he can earn in over 5 years, so he'll end up owning 40% of the brewery. That's something that a lot of brewers never get to do who work in big operations. And we've set this up because this is a bet on Bill. Bill is the company. We do have 2 key man life insurance policies, one for $950,000. The bank is the beneficiary of that. And the other one is his wife, Beth Madden, who's a big part of our team, is the other beneficiary. So if something happens to Bill, we can actually buy her out if she wants to get bought out. I don't think she will. Looking at all of our advisors, these are all the things you have to do when you open a brewery. everything from restaurant operations to architecture, legal, real estate, accounting, brewery operations. You need people on your team. A lot of these people work for free. So why would everybody wants to be a brewer? I'm a brewer. I used to have the largest lager brewery in McLean, Virginia. Now it's the third largest because A.J. DeLange bought a 55-gallon system, and then Bloody Gordon Biersch came in with their 10-hecto system. I still have the biggest lager brewery in my neighborhood, but I haven't brewed since last July. But I was talking to Chris at More Beer, and I'm going to buy some new tops for my Conicals. You get to keep your day job. Where we live, median income is $130,000. Average is about $260,000. You actually need that kind of money to live in our geography. I couldn't afford to be employed by the Brew Hub. If you're an investor, you get bragging rights, you get limited liability, and this is to speak to something that's very specific. You don't have a personal guarantee, no collateral, no recourse. Let's say the bank owns the project. If there's problems, then the landlord owns the project, and after that, they're going to come after me and Bill. So it's all on the line, everything, except for I have set up trusts for both my daughters, so if something happens to me, they still get to go to school and have a roof over their head. There's a lot of favorable tax treatments if you are an investor in a business like this. We're set up as a Virginia LLC, so all the losses flow through to the investors, as do all the profits. Now, on the con side, you do have to keep your day job. You don't get to brew for a living. Brewing's hard work, especially if you're making a lot of beer. A lot of these companies are structured in a less than transparent way, so you really need to understand how it's structured. Otherwise, you're going to get taken to the cleaners. I don't know how many people know Bob and Ellie Tupper, but they're really well known in the D.C. area, and they have a contract brewery. They did a small investment in our brew pub when they read all the financial disclosures. Are like, hey, we might actually make money on this, because all our other investors, we were like a G preferred, which means when they sold the company, they saw nothing. They barely got any revenue. It was almost a donation, and we're not set up like that. Everybody's incentivized the same way. So how do you do an investment? There's a lot of stuff on here that you can read when we send the slides out, but this is the kind of stuff your attorney will tell you. There's ways to raise money without having to go through a lot of rigmarole. This SEC regulation, Rule 504, that's all I'm going to say about it, is a good way to go. We actually have 42 accredited investors, which meant that they were able to get the private placement memorandum without having to do all the SEC filings, although you do have to do SEC Blue Sky filings and also state filings. There's a lot going on there, which is why we have a lot of attorney fees. If you don't have the money, but you do have a retirement, 401k or IRA, there are ways to structure things, if you're interested in talking about that, so you can actually do an investment. We've had 5 or 6 people do that. And it's as long as you're young enough and you're not going to need that money to retire soon, you can get that money back. So what's a good investment? I put a lot down here on what that means, but I do a lot of work with venture capitalists on the technology side, and these guys really know what they're doing, and they bet on the team. You look at proven performers who have done this. I usually say have been successful in more than one business. And if you've got a brewer that knows what they're doing and knows how to run a brewery, that makes a big difference. If you're not a professional brewer and you haven't done it before, that's going to be something that you need to consider whether or not you're best in that role. You can go be an apprentice. You can go learn to brew. That takes a while. Look at your market. Look at the regulatory challenges. New York State's a real pain in the butt. I have one investor in New York State. I would never do it except it's Bill's mom. And the third thing is the product. You got the best recipe in the world. It doesn't matter if you don't have number 1 and number 2. So some other notes on here. If you ever ask a financial planner about investing in a restaurant or a brew pub, they're going to say no. Just expect it and talk to them about your retirement and your insurance, but not a brewery investment. So there's more here to read. You can read on your own. And I'll turn things over to Omar.
My beer. According to the schedule, more beer. According to the schedule, Omar, you have negative 20 minutes. So if you could do your presentation backwards, maybe that would. Omar.
All right, well, good morning. I guess first thing we got about 10 cases of beer, so hopefully we can pass those on out here. Being the local guy, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to get beer here, and being that we didn't just brew for the first time yesterday, but it's certainly been there. For me, I started homebrewing in 1994. I got a homebrew kit from a northern brewer from an old girlfriend. I remember saying, "Oh, great, another hobby. That's what I need." I still owe her a case of beer, but she doesn't talk to me anymore. So, I brewed on and off for a long time. I didn't quite catch, the full bug right away. It was around 2002 when my son Max was born. We did a baby beer announcement instead of a birth announcement, and it turned out pretty good. So that's when I really started brewing a lot more, and got into all grain shortly afterwards, and couldn't park the car in the garage because of all the homebrew stuff. And you guys all know the story. So 2004 is when I came up with the idea of starting a brewery. I was looking through a more beer catalog and saw they had a 3-barrel system for sale, and that's really. I guess when the light turned off in my head, or turned on, I should say. It's still turned off from 3-4 days of National Homebrew Conference events at the moment, but that's when the idea for me popped in, and I thought, hey, maybe I could open a brewery here in the Twin Cities. So it took a couple years before we sold our first keg in 2006. I'm going to shake that one up. I'm going to try and just go over a few things, and what I'm going to obviously talk about is what worked for me, the way I did it, and I'll say you shouldn't do this, but obviously I think that's one of the most important things starting a brewery. You got to do what you got to do. And you've got to figure out a way to make it work. And I was lucky enough to be raised in an entrepreneurial family. My mom and dad came from Pakistan and Germany to open a company here, and I'd worked with my folks my whole life. And, my dad was a pretty good mentor as I said, well, how do I get out of this if it doesn't work? And my dad's like, there's no getting out. He's like, once you decide to do this, you're all in. And you got to figure out how to make it work. And you got to figure out how to make the payroll. And you got to figure out how to pay the bills. It's like later on I say, don't take on investors if you don't have to. But if you have to, that's what you got to do. And that's really one of the key things is if it's going to be your place, you've got to make it work. Don't expect the banker to make it work. Don't expect a lawyer to make it work or your neighbor. They'll all help you. But when the shit hits the fan and it's your name on the line, you got to make it work. And that's really, I think, something everyone up here can say is like, you've got to, when everyone turns to you and say, oh, geez, I don't know, what are we going to do about this? You've got to find a way to do it. So this is the old home brewery back in 2003 and 2004, trying to figure out all grain, the whole all grain stuff. So I still got that set up in the brewery, but I don't think I've brewed a batch of beer for about 5 years, so I'm certainly not brewing a whole lot anymore. We had on that January day when I came up with the idea, I wrote down a list of reasons I thought I could open a brewery, and there's three things. There's three things that kind of we all address, and certainly in different ways here. One of them is finding a building or a space, which we've heard a couple different ways how to do it, of finding a new space or building a space or finding an existing space. And for us, luckily, my folks had a business, a 25,000 square foot building, a warehouse space in Minnesota that I was running their business. They used about 10,000 square feet of it, so I figured if I could talk my mom and dad out of 5,000 square feet of it for a good deal of rent, we would be able to make something happen. So this is back their old industrial facility where I know some folks have been out to the brewery. That's certainly up 100 in Brooklyn Center, and that's where I'm standing. Is pretty much where the brew house is today. So that's certainly a big plus, and kind of the way I got to get here is certainly a lot of advantages that don't everyone certainly doesn't have, but that's kind of how I got here, which is my story. I did pretty much as much of everything as I could. There's a lot of bootstrapping and sweat equity because I had $300,000 or so from selling some real estate, some couple duplexes, and but it's still not enough. I mean, you'll never, it seems like it's a lot of money, but you burn through it really fast when you're trying to put this whole thing together. And we ended up with a 30-barrel brew house. So that's the second piece is finding a brew house, of building brew house and money. And I thought I'd be able to find a used brewery easily, and that was incorrect. It's getting a lot more difficult to find a larger brew house. Like a 15, 20, 30-barrel complete brewery. Things have gotten so competitive just in the 5 years I've been in the business of finding a used brewery. They get snapped up really fast, it seems like nowadays. So usually if you show up, you've got to have a pile of cash ready to go. So the brew house we got was from the Dominican Republic, and it was a bit tricky getting it up here. The boiler that was supposed to work didn't work. That's the sign we have outside the brewery. Being that it was outside in the Dominican Republic for 3 months, they ripped off every piece of control wire on it. The chiller that was supposed to work. So these are a bit of the downfalls of buying a used brewery. The chiller that keeps all the glycol cold. It basically didn't work. So another piece of equipment we had to buy. One good thing about getting new equipment is you know exactly what you get. They're going to build it for you. Of course, it's a lot more money. But you don't end up with some of those surprises, which can be rather painful when you say, well, I don't have a new boiler in the budget. Well, you better figure out a way to get it in the budget because the brewery's not going to work otherwise. So we did a lot of stuff ourselves. That's me driving the Bobcat after I cut the floor out. The next day I cut the water main in the basement. I don't know if it would have been any better if we had someone professionally doing it, if they would have cut the water line. But all these kind of things happen in build out, especially when you don't have blueprints for your building. So for us, it took me about a year to get the building in shape. But being it was my folks' place, it took me that much time to pull all this stuff out. And I was still working at their business, running that and doing this at the same time. So it was a bit of some long days, and I think everyone up here would also agree it's a pretty all-consuming process trying to get a brewery going because there's no money coming in, money going out, and you've got to get all this work done. So it's a pretty massive investment, not just in money, not just in sweat equity, but certainly in time and I guess the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. So this is the brew house, 30-barrel brew house we got out of the Dominican Republic. We brewed our first batch in 2005. That's around where equipment costs, $250 when you add the brew house, 500 kegs. We had 4 30-barrel fermenters, 1 15-barrel bright, 1 30-barrel bright, 2 15-barrel brights, a small kegging line, cooler, the new boiler, the new chiller. So they add up fast. And we did as much work as we can. That's Todd Haug, our head brewer. I realized early on I liked home brewing. I'm a home brewer. Wasn't that good of a home brewer. I dumped a lot of beer down the drain. I have bad batches, and I would keep trying to figure out why. And it's happened to everyone. But when you get to be a professional, enter this in the pro game, it's you've got a lot less margin for error. The general public's not that excited to hear about your infection problems. And especially for us, a lot of what we did had to do with the way the laws are in Minnesota. If we had a brew pub, we couldn't sell in Minnesota. If you're a brew pub, you can't sell to other bars or liquor stores. If you're a production brewery like Surly, like Summit, you can't sell pints at the brewery. So a lot of what you're going to end up doing is going to depend on your state laws, and there's a huge variance from state to state, from county to county, and you better have a real good understanding of what's going on because it's definitely going to drive decisions on how you're going to do it, what you want to do. Because, for example, with some of the brew pub talking to having Tom and Rick talking about the brew pub examples, it is a lot can be a lot less dollars to get into it if you can get into an existing place, which is great. Like in Minnesota, being that we couldn't sell, we aren't able to sell beer to other places. And you can only be up to 3,500 barrels as a brew pub in Minnesota, kind of limits how far you can go. So all these things really come into play when you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. And usually there's not anyone to call up and have them tell you all the answers. It's just something you got to wade through. Reading state law is a real fun endeavor. So I had 2 of my best friends are lawyers, and they help me wade through Minnesota beer law. And it ended up that I was the one that had to make the argument to convince the state that we could self-distribute, just because some of these things are pretty difficult to figure out. But if it's your baby, you got to see it through. Just going to talk a couple other things about where we've gotten to and some of my thoughts on starting something up last year. So 2006, we sold 800 barrels of beer last year. We did 9,000. And hopefully we'll do a few more this year. We are able to self-distribute our beer, which is a huge benefit to getting a brewery going. Number one, you get the additional margin. You don't have a distributor. You get to collect the checks. Like Tom's saying, it's at least in Minnesota, it's COD, so you get the cash when you deliver it. But most importantly is you get to know the people that are your customers. Most bars are still owned by individuals. It's not that much of a chain business, or at least the folks that sell good beer. There are a lot of chains out there, but they're not going to sell. None of them sell our beer, and it's pretty great when you get to meet the owners. They see you humping the kegs down the set of stairs. That means a lot for them, because when it doesn't matter if you're selling cars, software, beer. It's still a person business, a person-to-person business. You get to know the people who are your customers, and that can't be replicated. So, now, especially with the way craft beer has exploded, a lot of distributors want to sign people up, but in a lot of states, when you sign up with your distributor, it's a more difficult relationship to get out of than a marriage. So much more. So you better make the right decision, and if you can self-distribute, do it. It's more work, but you get to meet the people that are selling your beer in a lot of cases. Know your laws. We can't sell beer at Surly. Obviously, that changes a lot of things of what you're going to do. So talk to you about a little bit about that. Talk to as many people as you can. I'm happy to talk to as many folks that are trying to start up breweries here in the cities as I can, because a lot of people were very helpful to me to get going. And the people in the industry are the ones that know the business. Like I said in 2004 when I got the idea, as a home brewer. I like good beer and brewed some, but I didn't know anything about the beer business. And there's a lot to learn as far as where the market is, what kind of beers are being brewed. And a lot of people are happy to talk. You got to talk to everyone. Folks that run bars, folks that run liquor stores. If there are breweries in town or brew pubs in town, it's not always easy to get to talk to brewers and brew pub folk, because they're pretty busy for most of the time. But do your best to keep trying to talk to them, because they'll have a lot of insights, and oftentimes people are happy to share. The beer business is a good one, and people are pretty generous with their time, where in other businesses they'd be like, you want to start a competitive business, I'm not going to tell you a thing. But with beer, for some reason, it seems like people are pretty willing to share, which is great. And know your strengths as far as what you're going to do. There's a lot of different things that go into making a brewery run. And if you want to start the brewery and be the brewer, that's great. But if you're the person that's starting it, people out in the public want to see you. They want to meet you. It's an exciting, fun field to be in, being a brewer. You bring a lot of beer is a social product, and a lot of people are excited to see the brewery and to hear your story. So as a brewer, as the owner, as the founder, you also want to get out there and talk to people about it. You want to just be in the brew house the whole time, because if it's great, if it's a brew pub, they can come to you and you can see them. But that's a real important part of getting that going. For us, the ace in the hole, I was real fortunate to have that family building available and having a little bit of money set aside to get it going. Obviously, that's not the case for everyone, but you've got to have something you think that's going to differentiate your place from everyone else's. There's I think 4 or 5 new breweries planning on being started here in the Twin Cities, and someone was just reading about it, and they're like, geez, it kind of sounds like they're all going to brew the same kind of beer. What's going to make them different? Because I think the next wave of craft beer is coming, and what's going to make all those breweries different from one another? You got to do something. It's not just great beer, because if you don't have that, it's not going to last. Hold on to your ownership if you can. It is a great way to get people involved, and certainly to get money if you need it, to get a lot of things that you need. But when you give away that ownership, you don't ever give it back. And that can be, certainly in the beginning when there's not a lot of money, it is hard to make those choices. But, if you end up giving away certainly more than 50%, then you're not the guy in charge anymore. And I have some friends at Buck Bean that tried to get things going out of Reno the same time we did. And it took them a couple years to raise all the money, and they don't have as much control as they want, but they opened the brewery. So that's all part of those decisions you got to make. Engage the local community. I think that's kind of a no-brainer for anyone that's in the business. Those are the folks that are excited about your beer. I don't know any startup breweries that have a marketing budget. Pretty much it's getting you guys, your local community, your local folks excited about what you're doing, and engaging them, because those are really the people that are going to go sell your beer. We called it Surly Nation in the beginning, or still do, because those are the people that go into bars and demand our beer. We didn't have any. It was just me selling beer in the beginning. And, after about a year, we stopped going out and selling because bars and liquor stores just started calling us because our fans went out there and demanded it at local bars. So it's a pretty powerful tool, just using your local beer community to get excited about what you're doing and have them do a lot of the work for you. Kind of with raising capital from investors, kind of cover that one with Buck Bean. Do you have the skills to be a head brewer? I didn't. I kind of knew that going in. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you've got to be able to do if you're the head brewer. Not just coming up with a recipe, but can you rip apart a pump? Can you do some basic wiring stuff? What are some of the other things? Some basic refrigeration stuff. It's not all things you have to do. You can certainly pay someone to do all those things, but it certainly helps to be able to do a lot of that stuff. When folks ask me, what should I do? What can I make myself to be more attractive to someone as a brewer getting into the job market? I usually tell them to learn how to weld. Because there's just a tremendous amount of other skills you've got to have as a head brewer than just making beer. And I think it's important that you kind of look at that and realistically and say, do you have all those skills to do all those things that you got to do? We hired a consultant, the same one, Scott Zetterstrom, and he did a great job getting things going. But even with his experience and what he'd done before, the budget projections were off by about 75%. So, it was stuff that really wasn't his fault. It's just that's the way these projects go. So once again, you can look to them for advice, but you're the person running it. You still better, at the end of the day, it all comes back to you. And as far as the last one, don't mortgage your house. If you got to do it, you got to do it. But I always say save mortgaging the house for that when the boiler breaks and the chiller doesn't work and you need a packaging line. That's when you mortgage the house the second time around. If you don't have anything to fall back on when you open the brewery, it's pretty tough because things come up and, you can have a business plan. I remember I talked to some guys from New York back when I was looking to get the brewery going in 2004. I had a brew pub going in New York, and they were telling me how they had this 200-page business plan going. And I exchanged cards with them, and they were just about to open. And I contacted them 4 months later to see, if I could get their business plan just to take a look at it. And they'd closed. So, business plan. Once you get the bankers or your investors online with the business plan, it's all kind of out the window. You just got to make it work. And if things come up, you got to find more money. And like for us, stuff breaks. You need a packaging line. You just got to find that cash somewhere when you need it. So I guess we'll wrap it up. Back to James. I imagine there's a couple questions.
I think the organizers of the conference did an awesome job of picking these brewers. 4 distinct perspectives from 4 different brewers. Next week, as I said at the beginning, we'll have questions from the audience, and Jay actually lets Lori put a word in, too. Just kidding. Just poking at Jay there. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can check out our home brewing DVDs, Introduction to Extract Home Brewing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits on our site, too. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store, too. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online from us in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are HP OfficeJet Pro 8500 wireless all-in-one printer. 4 of those. Very cool. And plush Nutty Gray Squirrel 8-inch squirrel. Thanks again, everybody. I love seeing baby stuff and kid stuff. So cool. Thanks again, and remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We appreciate your support. I'm assuming that that's for a baby. All kinds of people love stuffed animals. Don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association through the associate link at our basicbrewing.com site. And again, you can also subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine, too. That's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by our buddy Callie Dodson down in Austin, Texas. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.